2025 Planning Board meeting to order. Looks like we have quorum, so if everybody please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We will move to item 2A, which is approval of the minutes from the January 14th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review them? If so, are there any corrections, concerns, comments, or a motion to approve?
Move they be approved as read.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Oh, all in opposition. All right, that one's passed. All right, moving forward, we'll move on to the public hearing section of the agenda. We'll move into item 4A, REZ 2024-17, further information provided by staff.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Good evening. I'm submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. So the first item before you this evening is REZ 2024-17, a rezoning request by New Waters Recovery, North Carolina RTC LLC. This rezoning request is for approximately 13.9 acres located at 6321 Johnson Pond Road, PIN number 0677277435. The request is to rezone the property from the residential agricultural zoning district to the office and institutional zoning district. Accompanying this rezoning request is a land use plan amendment request from the mixed residential neighborhood and open space designations to the civic and institutional and open space designations. So essentially the open space areas remaining the same. Although the requested zoning map amendment is not consistent with the 2040 Community Vision Land Use Plan classification of mixed residential neighborhood, the petitioner has requested a change of the land use plan designation for this area to civic and institutional, which is compatible with the proposed rezoning and proposed use of the property. The requested rezoning district, or zoning district, is complementary to the existing uses in the general vicinity of the subject property, and the proposed use and site-specific conditions effectively manage future development of the site while preserving the historic J. Beal Johnson House. The requested zoning district supports the Land Use Policy 2.1, encourage infill development and redevelopment inside town limits. The requested zoning district supports the Land Use Policy 4.6, build parks and preserve open space. Staff has provided 2 potential motions for the board to consider. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Melissa before we move forward and open the public hearing? Looking like we don't see any. At this time, we would like to ask Attorney John Adcock to come up forward as the applicant representative prior to opening the public hearing, comment to the general audience to present on behalf of the applicant for this agenda item.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is John Adcock of the Adcock Law Firm located at 202 East Academy Street, and I represent the petitioner in regards to this rezoning. Tonight I have with me representatives of New Waters Recovery, Justin McClendon, the CEO, Thomas Hogshead, Director of Admissions, B. Reeves, Director of Business Development, and Ryan Peterman, who is with Trinity Partners and is the project manager for this project. This process is, we've had kind of a chicken or egg process here between the certificate of appropriateness, which was issued by the the Wake County Historical Preservation Commission. This property is designated a Fuquay-Varina landmark historic property by ordinance. In 1995, the town passed an ordinance designating this property as a landmark property. It also is on the National Historic Register of Places. And because of that, specifically because of the landmark designation, any changes to the property have to be approved by the Wake County Historical Preservation Commission, and they issue a certificate of appropriateness at the end of that process, hopefully. And that, I'm going to say COA, which is referred to as a certificate of appropriateness. The COA was granted by the Historical Preservation Commission in January of roughly a month ago. My clients purchased this property in October of last year. They paid $3.1 million for the property. It has a tax value of a little north of $2 million. This is a conditional rezoning, so we're going to present information regarding the specific use that is proposed. My clients will operate a residential treatment facility for individuals, adults who are suffering from substance abuse disorders. It is a facility that will house these individuals on site for a period of between 30 to 45 days. It is going to be an upscale facility, and I use that term because my clients are going to be, right now they're proposing to spend in excess of approximately $10 million, between $8 and $10 million making improvements to this property. I'm going to show what the COA process came out of that COA process. There's not a site plan submitted with this rezoning, but I think it's important for the board to know what the Historical Commission approved, and really with that approval, this site plan is kind of locked in, subject to some variations that may be worked out with the town staff during the site plan process. But we have a site plan that was approved by the Historical Preservation Commission, and I'm going to show that to you tonight. The treatment that takes place at this facility will be voluntary only. Think of this, there's two types in general terms, and I'm not an expert on these matters, but my clients are, and they're here to answer any questions. But you can have a voluntary treatment facility, or you can have involuntary. Involuntary is a legal action. That's where someone is recommended and a judicial officer issues an order saying that person needs to receive treatment. That is not the case here. In fact, my clients are willing to accept a condition that says they will only have voluntary commitments. That's what they do. That's their business model. They're not going to accept involuntary commitments. They go through, individuals that want to seek treatment at this facility will go through an in-depth screening process. And there's what are called exclusionary factors that are used to find out, to make a determination if this person is appropriate for this level of treatment. And if those factors aren't satisfied, then those individuals are not allowed to participate in the treatment. Individuals that come to this facility have to be medically stable and not be suffering from any acute mental health conditions. The improvements that were approved by the COA process, and I'm going to show the site plan here. It's a little small, so there, of course, the historic building itself is going to remain unchanged. The only alteration to the J. Bill Johnson House is going to be the addition of a handicap ramp. That is it. And that was approved by the Historical Preservation Commission. The major improvements to the property will be two residential halls located to the east of the main house. These are the yellow items you see on this map, on the site plan. And this will be residence halls. One will be for men, one will be for women. It's 12 spaces in each hall. So there's a total of 24 individuals that could be on this site receiving treatment at any one time. There's also going to be a fire access, safety access road built between the main house and the two new residence halls. There's a garage-type building to the south of the pool. They're going to add on to that garage for food preparation. This facility, all the meals are cooked by a chef on site. And one thing I want to really emphasize here is that almost all this site, and I know you guys, I'm sure y'all are familiar with the property, is heavily wooded. It's a beautiful piece of land. These trees are staying in place. They had a tree survey conducted where they didn't identify every single heritage tree, but I think they identified like 168 of them, or somewhere in that ballpark. The only trees being removed, which this is per the COA process and approval, are trees being removed to construct these improvements. There's approximately 23 or so trees being removed, and as a part of the COA application, my client has agreed to replace each and every tree that is being removed with the same species. Obviously, it's not going to be as tall as the trees that were removed, but it's the same species of tree being put back. That exceeds the ordinance standards that the town has, where you have to replace heritage trees within buffers. These trees, I don't think there's any trees coming down within buffers. But the bottom line is they're going to replace the trees and preserve the forest is to the extent possible, to the fullest extent. So this is a site plan. Again, this is not part of the zoning package, but again, we had this chicken and egg situation where we had to go through the COA first, and this is what resulted from that. This next slide is a aerial depiction of what the improvements will look like once constructed. You see that the pool is located directly to the east of the main house, the historical house. These two buildings to the east will be the two residence halls that will be constructed on the property. One of the key elements of the COA process was that, and the COA process is regulated by state statute. So the Wake County Historical Preservation Commission operates as a quasi-judicial body, and their authority comes from enabling legislation from the General Assembly. And the enabling legislation says that no improvements or no changes to these historical landmark properties can occur unless it's demonstrated that there's no adverse impact in general terms to the historical significance of the property. What this slide depicts, one of the big issues that my client's design team had to deal with is if this is the main house here in the middle, these are the proposed residential buildings to the east. Well, as I'm sure you know, the historical house sits on the top of a hill on the property. The topography goes down from that house on all sides. One of the big challenges, which was satisfied, was moving these residential halls downgrade so that they would have limited visibility from Johnson Pond Road. And my clients did an excellent job, their design team did an excellent job responding to capillary preservation's comments regarding the plan. But the bottom line is they have moved these residence halls downgrade from the historical home where there's very limited visible impact from the presence of these new buildings on the site. Again, these are not part of the rezoning package, but I want to make sure you understand what was approved, because this is what my clients will build. This is a elevation showing the residence halls, what they will look like. They're one-story buildings, approximately 4,500 square feet in area. And one of the critical challenges with making improvements to an historical property or landmark property is that you don't want, well, I say you don't want, the Historical Commission does not want new buildings to be an attempt to look historic. They want the architecture to be consistent, but at the same time, they don't want to try to recreate some historic, build some type of historic structure here, because that would be, would not be consistent with the historical nature of the property. But these designs were approved through the COA process, and this is how my client intends to build these structures. This last slide is a side and rear elevation of those buildings. So regarding the land use with this property, this is intended to be a low-intensity land use. I have, part of what my client has done is had a trip generation analysis prepared by Kimberly Horn, if I can pass these around. And we concur completely with the staff report. The staff report identified what the alternative development options for this property are. The MRN land use classification supports a potential PUD for this site, which the maximum density would be approximately 83 units across the entire property. My client is proposing 2 buildings to be constructed. The property will remain intact as one property, will not be subdivided. And the report that I've just handed out by Kimberly Horn is dated August 28, 2024. It's by Tony Tate, and, excuse me, it's from Lyle Overcash, a transportation engineer. So one of the conditions that you will see in this application is that the residence that are getting treatment at this center will not be allowed to have vehicles on site. So there's going to be very limited vehicular trip generation from this site. Based on the zoning conditions and the classification of the land use, Kimberly Horn found that this land use is expected to create 56 vehicle trips per day, with 5 to 7 vehicles per hour during peak hours. Now, I'm not a transportation engineer, I'm not trying to act like one, but the same manual that was used for this report, which is the ITE Trip Generation Manual, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual, finds that a single-family residence generally generates somewhere between 9 to 12 trips per day. So if there are 83 units located on that property, you're talking about somewhere between 800 and 900 vehicle trips a day originating from this site. This land use, as proposed, with the zoning conditions, is expected to only generate 56 vehicular trips per day. Also, in regards to the other alternatives for developing this property, is the amount of tree removal. If this property was developed, this 13 acres of property was developed, it would take, and I'm not an engineer, but it would be massive site grading would take place. There is only limited amount of grading occurring with this land use, only to construct the 2 main buildings, to put in the side path, and some other ancillary things. Also, we'll talk about the environment, right? There's a blue line stream that is along the eastern boundary of the property. There's going to be limited grading. There's not going to be any significant change in the stormwater management on site versus an 83-unit single-family development. Another unique aspect of this property is how it's buffered by natural buffers and regulatory buffers. As you're aware, to the north of this property, the northeast of this property is Johnson Pond. To the north and northwest. To the north and northeast is Terrible Creek. Well, those are environmental features with regulatory buffers surrounding them. And as I mentioned, there's a blue line stream that traverses the eastern boundary of this property. So this development, the improvements being made to this property are minimal compared to what the land use plan supports could potentially go on this property. So we understand that the staff received some questions regarding, or concerns regarding safety. Again, I want to emphasize, this is a facility, people are going to pay between $50,000 and $65,000 for a 30 to 45-day stay at this location. The clientele that my client seeks to have at this site, these are professionals. These are professional athletes, these are CEOs, these are lawyers, these are people that voluntarily want to seek treatment. No one will be held on this property against their will. If at any point in time someone wants to leave, they're allowed to leave. And also, if they breach rules and regulations, ultimately that could lead to them being removed. With the recently we submitted to the staff a summary of security measures that are part of this development. There's going to be a gated entry at the facility, cloud-based 24-hour video surveillance of the entire property. They're estimating this is going to include up to 40 cameras across the property. No weapons are allowed on the premises. The clients are monitored 24 hours a day. This is a structured program where the client's daily activities are in accordance with a strict schedule. There's 24-hour awake staff on site. There's on-site nighttime security. There's a mandatory curfew. And again, I emphasize this is a voluntary program. These clients that come to seek treatment at this facility must be highly motivated, engaged in the treatment process. And they must be medically stable and free from any acute mental health systems for admission. The pre-screening process is there. And there's regarding safety concerns, from a business perspective, there's no one more motivated to have a safe facility than my clients. They're looking to spend over in excess of $10 million on this property. The treatment they provide is dependent on the safety of the facility for the people that are on site and for the community as a whole. It's imperative that they have a safe facility, and also I will note that they have a facility they're operating in Raleigh currently. It is on Bland Road. I'm going to pass. I'm passing out a Wake County GIS aerial map, and this is a facility operated by my clients. It's a voluntary detox and assessment program. The level of care at this Raleigh facility is a higher level of care, so it's less selective than what will be how the process will work on the Johnson Pond Road properties. But you will see a property outlined in red. That is the facility. That facility has no fence. It's in an urban area of North Raleigh amongst residential and commercial land uses. There's an elementary school approximately a mile away. And as of today's date, there have not been any reports of criminal activity at this facility or any instance of violence at this facility. In addition to the assurances we provided staff regarding the safety of the property, my client also has rules and regulations that those seeking treatment must follow. I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list of these, but they're extensive. There's a clothing policy. There's certain articles of clothing you cannot wear. There are group therapy guidelines, which require people to be where they're supposed to be on time and early. Of critical importance, there's a prohibition on certain items coming on site. Now, the way this process will work is these individuals seeking treatment, after a pre-screening process and after they're admitted in the program, someone will drive them to the property, drop them off, and then leave. And that person will be the client will be on site. And they are prohibited from bringing, at any time, possessing alcohol, illegal drugs, any prescribed or over-the-counter medications. Any prescribed medications are held by the staff of the facility. There's no weaponry, knives. There's no photographs or printed material that could be deemed by staff to be inappropriate. No electronic entertainment devices. There's no sports equipment. They don't even allow aerosol can products, any products containing alcohol, including scented lotions. No mouthwash, no aftershave, no pipes, no cigarette rolling papers, no credit cards, no checks, no credit cards. In fact, if a family member wants to send cupcakes along with these people that are being admitted, they can't do that. They can't bring anything with them. All right. The policy also stipulates that if mail is delivered to them at that site, that mail is opened in the presence of a staff member. Again, I just emphasize the business model here. My clients, their whole business reputation is having a facility that is safe and provides an environment that is conducive to the treatment that they will be providing. So in sum, this is a high-quality, high-level, upscale treatment facility. It's a low-intensity land use. Compared to what would be permitted on this property, this is minimal changes to this property, and all of these changes that have been proposed or being proposed have been approved as part of the certificate of appropriateness process, the COA process. We agreed to staff's analysis in the report. We find this proposed land use is consistent with the land use plan and the LDO, and we would ask the board to approve it. Recommend approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Just one quick question. For the COA that you talked about, I'm assuming that application had all the full details, just as you have explained tonight, to the Historic Preservation Society on what that site will contain?
Yes, absolutely. And so the site plan, which the site planning process was started in August, maybe, and with the COA process, what happens is Capillary Preservation is a nonprofit, and they're under contract with Wake County. So when someone comes forward with a COA application, Capillary Preservation, they serve as kind of intermediary. They go back, they look at it, they provide comments, and so this site plan and the elevations is a result of extensive back and forth with Capillary Preservation, and all of that information was presented to the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission via an application. We also made a presentation, and they voted unanimously in favor of these proposed changes. So if there are things that are altered on this site plan or any part of that COA application, it's either considered a minor change or a major change. A minor change will be something administratively CAP could approve. If it's a major change, that would require going back to the Wake County Historical Preservation Commission to get a new COA if it's a major change. So yes, every aspect of this site work, I mean, the exterior elevations, the building materials, I mean, it was an extensive process, and Wake County Historical Preservation Commission has what are called their principles and standards. It's a lengthy document, and what you have to do at those hearings, again, that's a quasi-judicial body, so you have to produce evidence to the board during the hearing. But the principles and standards lays out every single aspect of any change that's being proposed to a historical landmark. And so we had to address all of those. And I don't know if you had a chance to see the report or not that they produced, but it's an extensive report by the commission, their findings. But it was all found to be, they found it favorable for us, for the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
What's the date of expiration on the COA? What does it mean? What do you have to have done by the COA? Because it lists basically a year from now. So like, what do you have to have done by then? Do you have to just have this approved, the zoning approved, or do you have to have the buildings renovated, or how far do you have to take it?
To my knowledge, and Chairman, I'm not absolutely certain about this. I don't think it works like a site plan approval for the town where you've got a certain amount of time to do things. I mean, I think as long as we proceed in accordance with what was approved, I think we can do that. We have to have the rezoning. Now, it's not a condition for the COA that we get the rezoning, but obviously to operate the intended use of this property, we have to have the rezoning. And that's why we're here. So, but I'm not aware.
We should probably, staff, we should probably get an answer for that question. My understanding is the expiration date is you have to start the renovations by that time, not complete them. In other words, you can't like 5 years from now start doing some renovations. You have to, I believe that, I mean, because I've been through that process myself, so.
Well,
The only reason I ask that is because, like, if you have to have construction completed by January 14th of next year, and you're rezoning now, that's probably a little far fetched to think that could happen.
And my client, with the project manager, they're already in the process of getting the construction process started. They've done a lot of work already. I mean, this was extensive. The architecture's been done, the site plan's been done. So they'll be in the process of choosing contractors, going through that process in the very near future, but obviously want to wait to see if the rezoning is approved before they spend too much more on it.
Sure. So do you guys, because this is kind of like a hospital, do you have to get a certificate of need as well? Or?
There's no certificate of need. Justin, I'll let Justin McClendon, he's the CEO, let him address that.
The quick answer to that is no. There's no certificate of needed for the particular level of care that we were licensure that we would be applying for.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there is licensure by the state.
That's correct.
If you want to.
Yeah, sure. So yes, there is licensure from DHHS here in North Carolina, and not to bore you guys with those details, but the licensure we would be seeking is level 3.5, which is residential treatment for individuals who are substance users, is the nomenclature there. And yeah, there's, as I'm sure you guys are aware, a very rigorous process that we would go through in order to achieve the licensure. We've been through that process at our current facility for a higher level of care, which is licensed at 3.7, which is non-hospital medical detox. We also are certified through the Joint Commission at our current location, and we would be seeking the same accreditation as there as well, which in my professional opinion is actually a higher level of rigor than what is required here in North Carolina. And that's just everything from the building itself, how we conduct treatment, how we ensure that our staff and the clients that we serve and the community in which we provide those services are all maintained and provided in a safe way, and so forth and so on.
Does anybody else have any other questions for applicant?
So this is going to be 2 buildings and then anything after that?
No, that is our entire plan for this property, is exactly what we propose, is to build, to maintain the historical home as it is with just, very minor improvement for the handicap ramp, building the 2 additional structures, and that is all we plan on doing. As a matter of fact, it's extremely important to us that we maintain the openness of the land there, the serene and beautiful environment that exists at the house is what initially attracted us to it to begin with, and we have 0 plans on doing anything further than what we proposed.
I do have a question on the, you had a neighborhood meeting, and it looks like nobody showed up.
Nobody showed up at the neighborhood.
But I also note that there weren't, there were all of nine individuals or companies notified of it. So I guess, and in looking at it, it looks like, if I'm just looking right at that property, there's not a lot right around it. If there's any, there are some obviously concentrations of neighborhoods both to the north and the south of it, but those were not included in your required radius of.
No, sir, it's 200 feet from boundary of the property.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, there was only one single-family residence within 200 feet.
Okay.
And I've not received any communication. I did have a discussion with Tommy Broadwell, who's here tonight, about it. But beyond that, I've not had any communication from anyone.
Okay, yeah, that's what, it was just, it's unusual for us to see, but it's also with the limited number of folks that, you didn't, it wasn't like you had a neighborhood there that everybody in the neighborhood got, because there aren't really any neighborhoods that close.
And I do want to point out that as a part of the COA process, I can't remember the distance from the boundary lines, but there's also a public notification as a part of that we don't provide, that the.
Yeah, capillary.
Cap, yes.
Yeah, Cap does,
Yes.
okay. That's all I have.
To access the site, I believe that right now is a shared drive, where one part of it goes off towards Johnson Pond, and then one will go off towards the property. What's planned for that?
There's going to be utilized a construction entrance to the south of the home. That will be removed after construction is complete, and that's part of the COA process approval. The main entrance on the north side of the property, there's going to be a gate installed on that entrance. That will be the only entrance to and from the property, on and off the property. One thing that's a little bit unique about this is, and for the old timers, that Johnson Pond Road used to be aligned to the east of where it is now. And so DOT owns this property here just to the north. So the access will be the main drive using the old right-of-way for Johnson Pond Road back to this intersection with Johnson Pond Road, which is south of the New Bridge. Does that answer the question?
It does. It does.
So there's going to be, the access will be the main entrance that exists there, and will be gated. And the gate was approved by in the COA process.
Any more questions for the applicant team? If I could, sir, just have you sign in that you did speak and state your name and record for the, so just go up here and state your name and record so we have it, so Eva's got it, and then just make sure you sign in with Eva, just because you did speak here at a public hearing.
So name and home address? Justin McClendon, CEO at New Waters Recovery, and my address is 503 Thorncrest Drive, Apex, North Carolina.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stackhouse. All right. This time, we'll turn it over to Assistant Planning Director Melissa Sigmund, who has an item to enter for the record.
Was this the public hearing?
It started the public hearing, but not the public hearing for open to the public. That was the applicant's part of it.
All right.
So the public hearing is open, but that was the applicant piece of it.
Okay.
But this time, Assistant Planning Director Melissa Sigmund has an item to enter into the public hearing for REZ 2024-17.
Thank you, Chair. We did receive an email that I am entering into the official record. The individual was not able to attend the meeting this evening. That email has been provided at each of your seats, and the email is from Linda Erickson. So as I said, that is now entered into the official record for the item.
And for the planning board members, if you haven't skimmed through it, it would be entered in the opposition category. All right. At this time, we'll open it up to the general public. Eva, do we have anybody signed up to speak up for this case?
We do not.
Nobody has signed up to speak in favor or against.
In favor or against, we have no one signed up.
Okay, if there's anybody that did not sign up that wishes to sign up, either in favor or against. All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion. Does anybody have any questions for staff or general discussion?
Just one quick question regarding the proposed greenway that's in the vicinity. It doesn't look like it actually crosses into, onto this parcel that we're talking about. So nothing's gonna have to be done about the greenway for that area, for this development?
So during the site plan, during the site plan review process, we would identify if there are any on-site improvements. If that greenway were part of the improvements, whether it is part of the frontage improvements or on-site improvements, at that point we would identify if there are any expectations of requirements based on the CTP. Given that location, I don't believe we've had any specific discussions with staff regarding the feasibility of construction, but again, that would be detailed with that full site plan review process.
Melissa, given that we have a change in land use, it's just we don't really get these kind of things very often where we have the Historic Preservation Office coming in, and we just don't get a lot of these. When we hire as a town, we hire the land use consultant to do our land use plan. Do they look at any of the historic preservations of things when they're assigning land uses? Like, do they look at it and say, all right, there could be a historic house on this property, therefore maybe we shouldn't put a neighborhood here because it's going to be a lot of challenges there. Maybe this is a better use, does that get into play?
So it is possible, although it is also possible that at a very fine grained level such as this, where you're talking about one specific individually owned property, that may not come into play with the land use plan decisions. And so that is where we do sometimes see that a change to an individual property in the land use plan could be appropriate based on additional considerations such as historic preservation.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I guess I had another couple other questions as it relates to kind of the conditions and the zoning and what we're allowed to actually include in the zoning conditions, because a lot of what Mr. Adcock said was, it's really good and it's geared around security and how the facility is secure. But if, say, New Waters decides to sell this property and we have decided to rezone it to this use, how can we make it to where those kind of provisions move forward as well with another facility? Like, can we essentially require a zoning condition so that if ownership changes, it has to come to the board for changing conditions? Is that something that's on the table for planning board to consider? Just because, there's some really good information in these security measures that we're given here, but not all of these are incorporated into the conditions, and I'm not sure you actually can, because I don't know how you would enforce them, but.
I would ask the town attorney to speak to that, and I believe your question is whether or not if the current petitioner ever sold the property, whether or not the conditions that are being proposed would carry over, transferable? Right. Okay.
Any condition that would be on this rezone would run with the land and be binding on somebody in the future. And
Right.
if they were so specific, it's likely somebody in the future would have to come back to us to change them if they're really specific.
Right, I guess what I'm asking is like, so this is a voluntary facility, right? There's nothing in these conditions that says that it has to be a voluntary facility, right? Like, that's not a condition right now. So if this gets sold and now it's not a voluntary facility, we still approve the rezoning like that. Like, I think the program is great, but how do we ensure that what is in here goes into the zoning? Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair, if I can.
Sure.
My client will agree to a condition that this be a voluntary only
Okay.
facility.
Yeah, so I guess that's the thing, is maybe those are some of the things that, as the board discusses this, that could be some suggested conditions to give assurances that, what's being proposed, which sounds like a very good facility, doesn't necessarily get lost in the fact of a zoning, in just a general broad zoning for you know, if this facility were to get sold. We do have to consider that on the board, that whatever we approve, we don't necessarily approve who is doing it, but what they're doing. So that's good to know. So same kind of thing with maybe the architectural standards. I know our town board is very particular on what you show in a site plan or an architectural, being able to back that up with some sort of condition to be built. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, I think we're covered with, I mean, the Historic Commission actually probably does a lot of the heavy lifting in that area.
But only on the building that's historic, not the other
on
two buildings.
property.
Is that, Mr. Adcock?
It's on property.
Mr. Redpath's correct.
So the entire property would have
The
to adhere to
entire
that.
13
Every single improvement being made on this property
Well, has to go.
was regulated by.
And that
historic-
includes the trees. You talked about the trees. You can't take out a single heritage tree without the permission of the entire property. So the entire property has to remain intact. And that's I mean, they brought themselves an extra load of things to do because of that. But that is, I think, again, at least from my perspective, where I see, is that the Historic Commission will do the heavy lifting in terms of whether they try to expand or not, and with the quality of that expansion to match the historic nature. What they probably can't do is and what my concern might be would be, okay, you got 2 residents and it's very successful, and they've really, it's like, well, what if we ramp it up to, you know, add another 2 halls? And then they go through this whole process and add another 2 halls. But we just want to make sure that they do that. We've already rezoned it, so does the planning board or the Board of Commissioners get to see it again before that's done? You know, obviously there's some construction and some other things, so permitting and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, at what point do we make sure that it's kind of what's been presented here? That's always, it's a challenge with any kind of, you know, rezoning. Once you've rezoned it, we've kind of lose our leverage on that unless we've got significant conditions in there.
And one thing I want to add, Mr. Chairman, is that I didn't mention this, it's a condition that my client is pursuing a historical preservation easement with capillary preservation. It's one of the proposed conditions. And that's another layer of regulation on this property that actually regulates the inside of the historic property. Currently, the landmark designation does not give jurisdiction to the Historical Preservation Commission to deal with things on the inside. It's all the exterior. Granting an easement changes that, and my client has agreed to pursue that. We have a draft received from CAP. We're reviewing that now, and we hope to get that worked out between now and the town board hearing. But one more quick point. The whole property is designated as a landmark property.
Okay.
So it's not just the house, it's the entire property.
So if the house does or the property gets sold and it goes through a different ownership change, does Historic Preservation get back involved in that as well?
By ordinance, by the town of Fuquay-Varina, it is a landmark property, and any changes to that property are regulated through the historic preservation process. As I said, it could be a minor change, something administratively CAP could handle, or it could be a major change where there's a new COA that has to be issued. And all due respect to the town's architectural standards, but there's no comparison to what Historic Preservation Commission.
For sure.
has.
Our town board is very particular. I've seen them kind of ask people to basically make a guarantee that what they showed is what they're going to build. So it's more of a heads up for you guys to be able to address that when you get there.
Yeah, if my clients don't build those elevations, the Historical Preservation Commission has enforcement rights against them.
And they will.
For sure.
I tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for staff or the applicant, or any discussion, motions?
I just a comment is that, you know, I'm actually somewhat familiar with these type of treatment centers, and upscale ones as well. And this is again, they've taken on a significant amount of extra effort to ensure the high quality of what they're doing, and I recognize the value of that in the treatment process. So, in essence, I guess I understand what they're doing from the historic perspective, but also from the treatment perspective. This is, you know, it's like, you know, if you're charging customers, you know, multi-tens of thousands of dollars, you know, patients, you know, in order to get themselves better. These are people that are struggling, but have the means to get the help that they need. And so that's kind of people that I would imagine are going to be here basically with a historic home, a pool, and these nice centers and a whole kitchen area being made. I mean, this is going to be just a resort-like sort of setting for them to get better, so that they can focus on their own health. So I actually
Sounds like a motion.
Yes, okay, and so,
Or it's coming.
everybody else needs to have a
Yeah.
chance to discuss it, but
That's
I
okay.
definitely, and the other thing is to point out, we just don't have a lot of really close neighbors around there that would, I mean, not that this is a very low, extremely low intensity from the perspective of the community and the neighborhood. It's one of those, once it's in, we really won't even know that it's there, other than that we had it through this planning board. Most of the citizens won't really know that it's there. It will be, it should operate pretty quietly and silently. And that's kind of, I mean, you can't ask for a better operation and better tax dollars, that kind of thing. That kind of setup. So I would definitely support this, how they're doing it. But I would, we do need to make sure that there's some sort of way to make sure that they're committed to, that we have a way of putting conditions in so that we know that what they've presented here, and I think with the Historic Commission and some other things, I feel fairly confident that, they're going to follow through, and also it's not going to be a switch out in 2 years. We're going to have some sort of, there's just no opportunity for this petitioner to be able to do that. They really are locking themselves in hard with what they're doing. They haven't given themselves too many escape hatches, which is, I appreciate that takes a lot of effort to do that, but this is pretty much what we see is almost certainly what we're going to get, which is unusual in a zoning case at this level, right? To have this kind of confidence, or at least for me to have this kind of confidence, we're gonna see this whenever it's built. So I would support it, but I'll let it.
Any other discussions? Are we ready for a motion? It sounds like you could make a motion if you'd like, Ed.
I will make a motion to recommend approval of REZ 2024-17, a zoning map amendment for 6321 Johnson Pond Road from residential agricultural zoning. Yeah, I can read it here. District to office and institutional conditional zoning district, O&I CZD, and the corresponding land use plan amendment for the mixed residential neighborhood, MRN, and open space OS classification to the civic and institutional, CIV, and open space OS classifications, as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the reasons that have been identified by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we vote, do you want to add the condition on there that that was agreed upon about it being a voluntary
Right.
facility?
And yes, I will amend my motion to add that we would look at a condition upon the, that the petitioner has agreed to the condition of that all commitments for patients would be voluntary.
I'd like to add another commit, that they be adults only.
And that, I guess that wasn't listed in the
I think that
conditions?
was listed as
That's-
adults, yeah.
I still second Ed's motion.
Okay, and so
So we've got the condition with the voluntary facility is
Yep.
what's added in.
voluntary commitment.
Nolan, your second still good?
Yep.
All right. Everybody's good for a vote then? No more discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
All right, that was a bit of a doozy. All right. At this time, I would like to recuse myself from agenda item 4B, REZ 2024-18.
All right, I'm gonna read the motion if somebody wants to make
Oh,
it,
wait.
since I have it all written out here. I'm
He's-
looking for a
He missed
motion.
January.
Oh, but don't we have to vote to recuse you first?
That's
That's,
what I
yeah,
did.
he's
Oh, is
got a
he?
motion there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it out since I have it written out here.
Okay.
Though. I'm looking for a motion to recuse Andy Petty from discussion and action for zoning map amendment, Holland South Estates LLC, 8514 Purfway Road, PIN 06666136612, REZ-2024-18.
Second.
So moved from Barb.
You making the motion?
Yeah, you got,
Yeah, he made the motion. I'll
Yeah.
second it.
You gotta take a
I read
vote.
it out.
I read it out.
Sorry.
Make it, I'll say it.
You gotta vote. You gotta take the vote.
Yeah, well, I was
You gotta-
getting the motion in a
Barbara, you
second,
so
right?
moved.
So
Yeah.
moved. Thank you.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you.
the second?
He didn't make the motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did it
Barbara made
backwards.
the
I had it written down. I should have just let y'all move it. All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by voting aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so next we have public hearing item number 4B, REZ-2024-18. Further information will be provided by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good evening, Board. I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. The second item before you tonight is REZ 2024-18, a rezoning requested by South Holland Estates LLC at 8514 Purfoy Road, PIN number 06666136112. This rezoning is a total of 24.07 acres from the residential agricultural zoning district to the residential medium density conditional zoning district. The requested zoning district is consistent with the 2040 Community Vision Land Use Plan designation of single-family neighborhood. Staff recommends approval of the proposed zoning map amendment as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the following reasons. Number one, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2040 Community Vision Land Use Plan for the designation of single-family neighborhood. Number two, the requested zoning district is complementary to the existing uses in the general vicinity of the subject property, and the proposed uses and site-specific conditions effectively manage future development of the site. And number three, the requested zoning district supports the 2040 LUP's policy 4.1, manage future growth and development in accordance with the priority infrastructure investment areas map. The petitioner is here with us tonight, and I am also happy to answer any questions.
Any board members have any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? All right, if there's no questions, we'll open the public hearing. Do we have anybody signed up?
We have Don Curry.
All right, come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. My name is Don Curry with Curry Engineering, 205 South Fuquay Avenue here in Fuquay-Varina. We appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today and appreciate your consideration of this rezoning request. And thank you for staff's presentation. It was very thorough, and I have nothing really to add to it. I just wanted to touch on a few points, just to reiterate a couple things. As was mentioned, the proposed rezoning to RMD is consistent with the land use plan designation of single-family neighborhood, or SFN. There were a number of conditions that are outlined in the rezoning, so we took a lot of time going through that, pulling those conditions together and coordinating them with staff. I just wanted to touch on a couple quick points with those conditions. Number one is that the conditions do allow for what we feel is a healthy transition between conventional RMD to the south at Amber Ridge and the RA larger lots to the north, that are most of which are not in the town. But specifically, we have a large lot requirement for all the properties that are on the north end of this property for this rezoning. So that will require a minimum of 20,000 square foot lots on the north end of this property, abutting the larger RA lots. So we feel like this is a good transition between the conventional RMD to the south and the RA to the north. The other one I want to mention is that we have a proposed density condition of a maximum of 2.1 units per acre, which is far below the standard for RMD. Standard RMD density could be up to 4.36 units per acre, so we're less than half that with the density. And then the final thing is the list of architectural conditions that we're proposing. We want to ensure that these will be high-quality homes with consistent quality, and these architectural conditions help assure that that's going to happen. We did have a neighborhood meeting, and via Teams online. We had about 10 people attend the meeting, most of whom were from Amber Ridge. Topics discussed included wetlands, pond questions, roadway connections and widening, and just general layout and buffers. We did share kind of a quick snippet with those in attendance of the proposed layout for the subdivision, so they got an idea for what we're looking to do there. I also met with two individual homeowners on the north end of the property separately from the neighborhood meeting. They weren't able to attend that, but I met with them in person and explained to them what we were looking to do as well. So In conclusion, just wanted to say thank you for your consideration of this rezoning request. We feel it's good for the town, it's good for the community. It's appropriate with where it's at, and the conditions help make that so. But I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have.
You might have any questions for the petitioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Have anybody else?
We do not.
All right. Is there anybody that would like to speak that did not sign up? Yep, you can come right on up. Make sure you say your name and address for the record, and then check in with Eva as well.
Yeah, my name is Jo Boucher, B-O-U-C-H-E-R, and I'm on 8401 Purfoy Road. And my question is basically just to find out how the access is going to be from Purfoy Road and how that's going to affect the existing properties to the north and to the east.
And we typically don't respond, we'll listen, and then as we have discussion, once we get back out of closed hearing, maybe some of your questions will be
Okay, so
answered.
you cannot answer anything about the road?
Once we get into the discussion, we should be able to answer some questions. We'll ask staff. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else that would like to speak for or against it? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and if you can, check in up here. All right, so we'll bring it back to the board. Are there any questions, comments, motions, concerns?
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of how access will be determined off of Purfoy Road, and whether additional lanes will be needed or turn lanes or things like that?
So while this rezoning does not include a site plan, the applicant is in the subdivision review process and may be able to provide some feedback regarding their plans and their early subdivision comments.
Go ahead. And, yeah, go for it.
Be glad to. The layout is going to pick up Himley Road, I think it is, from Amber Ridge, and extend it around and connect into Purfoy north of Holland Hills Drive. So there will be one connection to Amber Ridge to the south, one connection to Purfoy, and we are working with the town on reviewing the appropriate turn lanes and widening on Purfoy Road. It will be widened up to for the CTP, to match the CTP widening program, and the right-of-way acquisition and things like that. So, so that's the plan right now. It's consistent with town standards, and we're working with staff on those approvals for the widening and the access on Purfoy.
So when the town does that, when you're approving it, I mean, you're looking at things like, you know, how traffic impact, how it's gonna, you know, affect the surrounding neighborhoods before the town's given approval for the development, right?
That is correct. So in the subdivision review process, either a trip generation letter or a traffic impact analysis is required for review, as well as all of the standard required improvements of the street frontage.
Gotcha. Somebody else have anything?
Yeah, but that is one thing I noticed about this, because there's not any developments that are either stubbed out or even in the CTP for north or to the west, I guess that is. That the only connection would be that one stub out and then over to Purfoy Road, somewhere through that property. So there's really no other connectivity that we're gonna see there. Although they might have to stub out to some of the adjoining properties in some way. Would that be normally required by the town? Because I'm just looking at all those, the properties that they have, you know, to the north there. I think that's the north, yeah.
So the applicant would be required to connect to the existing stub to the south, and as you mentioned, provide their main direct access from Purfoy Road.
Right.
Additional connection points would be considered, particularly by the town engineer, to determine if they are favorable and desirable for those adjacent properties.
Right, because it looks like most of the properties that are around that are ending in cul-de-sacs, so it's really hard to connect through them. But there's a whole bunch of either undeveloped or semi-developed properties that might need a stub out on it to ensure that there's some connection in the future, especially because they connect between Holland Road and that property, so, you know, I'm sure that's something that, you know, the petitioner will probably look at as well as the town when we get to that point. Right? We're just not there yet.
All right, any other questions or comments, or entertain a motion?
A question, did we close the public hearing?
We did.
Okay,
Yep. Yep.
That was me, I missed.
It's quick. I'll give a motion to recommend approval for REZ 2024-18, a zoning map amendment for 8514 Purefoy Road from the residential agricultural zoning district to the residential medium density conditional zoning district as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for reasons identified by staff.
All right, there's a motion. Second from Jay. All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Hand it back to Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll move on to public hearing item 4C, REZ 2024-20. Further information provided by staff.
Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. The third item before you tonight is REZ 2024-20, a rezoning requested by the McKeenan Property Group at 1900 and 1924 North Broad Street and 0 Dickens Road, pins 0657772966, 0657774574, and 0657777463. This rezoning is a total of 10.18 acres from the neighborhood mixed-use and urban mixed-use zoning districts to the general commercial conditional zoning district. There's also a land use plan amendment request included with this rezoning from the suburban commercial and industrial classifications to only the suburban commercial classification. Staff's recommendation is as follows. Staff recommends approval of the proposed zoning map amendment and corresponding land use plan amendment as they are reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the following reasons. Number one, the requested zoning map amendment is not consistent with the 2040 Community Vision Land Use Plan classification of suburban commercial and industrial, but the petitioner has opted to request a change of the land use plan to suburban commercial only, which is compatible with the proposed zoning change. Number two, the requested zoning district supports the LUP's policy 2.1, encourage infill development and redevelopment inside town limits. Number three, the requested zoning district supports the LUP's policy 2.6, encourage commercial development. Number four, the requested zoning district supports the LUP's policy 4.1, manage future growth and development in accordance with the priority infrastructure investment areas map. And number five, the proposed conditions offered as part of the petition align with the goals of the 2040 land use plan and effectively plan for future development potential of the site. I am happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Anybody questions for staff? Just one clarification question for everybody on the board. So it does look like there's only just a small piece of this that's actually out of the land use character plan, correct? Everybody sees that on their map. Okay.
Just the strip
Right.
on
I just
0
want to make sure
Dickens
we all
Road.
saw that, because
Right.
if you just listen to it and then look at the land use map, you get a little bit wacky. All right, there's no questions for staff. This time we'll open up the public hearing. Eva, do we have anybody signed up to speak for this?
We don't have anybody officially
Sorry,
signed.
I didn't sign up, but I'll sign up afterwards.
All right, if you could just state your name and address.
Good evening, Beth Blackman with Timmons Group, 5410 Trinity Road, Suite 102, Raleigh. I'm here this evening alongside Kyle Greer, the applicant and property owner representatives. We would like to express our gratitude working with staff on collaborating on this. You may recall, for some of y'all who were here maybe 5-6 years ago, we did this as East of Broad. So this property was East of Broad, which was going to be a mixed-use development, kind of in collaboration a little bit with the property behind it on Dickens Road, and it was supposed to be like a larger mixed-use development. Well, that parcel is remaining as industrial, and the town has adopted a new land use plan, which kind of is more geared towards this being suburban commercial, and as Mr. Petty pointed out, only a very small sliver is industrial. In fact, when I submitted the application the first time, I was like, oh, I don't need a land use plan amendment. It's like 99% suburban commercial, but I had to submit that part too. So it's just to get that little bit of area that was going to be a shared access originally brought back into compliance, and so that the entire development would be suburban commercial. And that is what aligns with the land use plan for this area, is you're looking at retail that serves the general public, the nearby residents, and the travelers on Broad Street. And so we have reduced the list of permitted uses. The area is subject to the highway corridor overlay, but we still restricted some of those uses just in case the highway corridor overlay changed in the future. So even though they wouldn't be allowed now, technically, we went ahead and included them on our prohibited uses list. Held a neighborhood meeting on January the 8th. We did not have any attendees. As was pointed out in some of the earlier cases, the notification list can be kind of small. So we did not have anyone reach out to us before or after the meeting. And so Kyle Greer is also here. He was going to share a few thoughts, but we are available if y'all have any questions.
All right, anybody got any questions for Beth? All right,
Thank you.
And if you could state your name and address.
Sorry, I didn't sign in. Good evening, I'm Kyle Greer with McKeenan Property Group, and we're the applicant of this property. I think Beth and staff summed it up well. You know, we're just trying to get this zoning kind of more appropriate for the uses that demand kind of being on a really busy road like that. So this is property that's been held. Our company represents a family office. This property was the original homestead of that family. So it's something that's been in their family over 100 years and something that we intend to keep in the family and just develop in a high quality manner. So if you have any questions, here to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for your consideration.
All right, Eva, we got anybody else?
We do.
All right, if there's anybody else out there that did not sign up that wants just to speak in favor or opposition, feel free to come on up. All right, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for questions and conversation.
I'm going to make a quick comment. It's, you know, the town has worked really hard to make these, I see UMU and NMU, and I'm like, oh yeah, we are gonna do these things, and we haven't been able to, not as often or as well as we'd like. And I don't know whether it's something that we as a town are, you know, maybe not giving enough incentive to complete these items, or whether, like in this case, obviously it was, you know, there was a change in how part of the plan went, so that really overflowed into this one. But still, it would have been really cool to see, you know, urban mixed use and neighborhood mixed use, you know, on Broad Street. That it would have been a nice thing to see. And so I just had to say that, you know, those kind of form-based development options that we've had out there for quite some time, you know, some of them have come to fruition. Other ones haven't, and it's something that we should probably think about as a town to say, you know, is there a way, you know, and I know we've actually made some updates to both to the form base, but also in some of our kind of strategy and direction with trying to get the right kind of development to come in. That's going to be, especially the stuff that's closer to the downtowns, to be, you know, essentially better for a downtown type of community versus a suburban type of community. But, you know, obviously this is kind of, so that's just my comment on this.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider is there is nowhere UMU or NMU anymore. So,
yeah,
you know, we've replaced those, and we have new tools in our toolbox now. This one's a little bit dated.
But again, it doesn't, even with that, it's still not, you know, this use is not falling in with those.
Right. I mean,
either, so.
I think the other problem you have here is, I mean, this is on the Highway Corridor Overlay District, which is a real big point for our town to develop it and get that tax base in here. If we do things that are, the form base does make things a little more difficult from a development perspective to get those uses in there. So, well, I get what you're saying. I think I kind of like the idea of going to a commercial on where we want commercial to be.
Yeah.
But that being said, more discussion, questions?
Motion to recommend approval of REZ 2024-20, a zoning map amendment for 1900 and 1924 North Broad Street and 0 Dickens Road from neighborhood mixed use zoning district and the urban mixed use zoning district to the general commercial zoning district, and the corresponding land use plan amendment from the suburban commercial and industrial classification to the suburban commercial classification as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by the staff.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Before we vote, any final questions, or everybody understands what we're voting on? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are now done with our public hearings, and we will move to the planning staff report, item 6A. Planning staff report. The purpose of this agenda item is to receive information on the disposition of the planning board's recommendation to the town of commissioners since the January 14th, 2025 planning board meeting. Any questions or anything on that for staff? No? All right, well, Barbara, it is your time to shine.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.